accountability is back. I quote Secretary Pete Hegseth. That was our Secretary of Defense on the record just a couple of months ago. Now the debate among national security professionals is over whether the Secretary was just incompetent or whether he was drunk.
Whew, okay. That was at a congressional press conference, I believe, on Wednesday. That is Congressman Seth Moulton, United States Marine. Seth and I actually served together in Iraq all these many moons ago. He's not holding it back. He's telling it like it is. Obviously, he's referring to the situation, what many are calling Signalgate or whiskey leaks, or depending on what kind of how you want to mock it, which, you know, we're going to mock it a little bit at some point, but right now it's kind of serious. And we want to gather you guys together once again. It's good to see you. Of course, if you don't know who I am Fred Wellman, host of Online Vote Vets. I'm a retired Lieutenant Colonel of the United States Army, and we are so glad to have you guys here. We wanted to go back and look at what's happened since we talked to you on Monday about the Signal scandal that is not going away, because it must not go away, because it is very, very serious. So we've got a great show to discuss. At first, we're going to go through, kind of update you on the story, what's happened in the last week and what's going on. We've got incredible guests. We have both. It's a very Air Force show. It's very uncomfortable. JJ, the producer, is very happy because he's Air Force, and we usually don't allow Air Force people on here. But JJ, of course, is Air Force. We've got a wonderful Air Force spouse and a former Air Force pilot who are dear friends of mine and good folks. We're glad to have him. But in the meantime, let's hear more of what Seth Moulton said with his colleagues this week about the situation with Secretary Hegseth and the Signalgate issues.
This put American lives at risk. This cheapens the work that our men and women on the front lines of our armed services and our intelligence agencies do every single day, because it says the rules that apply to you don't apply to us as your leaders.
And that's a big part of what's going on here. Obviously, Hegseth has made a big part of his personality, especially of the group. And the group was huge, okay? If you guys remember, just reviewing a little bit, the Signal Masters group included, it was started by Mike Waltz, National Security Advisor, ended up inviting, well, Jeffrey Goldberg, the senior editor of The Atlantic, but who was supposed to be there, but he did invite the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who you'll hear from. He invited the CIA Director, John Ratcliffe. He invited the Secretary of the Treasury for reasons nobody's actually gotten into. He invited Steve Witkoff, the Special Envoy to Russia, on and on. Secretary Rubio, the Secretary of State, all of them invited, ended up being 18 different channels of folks in this Signal chat discussing national security issues. And the things that jumped out at us from the beginning was, one, and you may have heard this already, one, nobody objected to having the conversation on Signal, which we'll talk about more later. Two, no one noticed they were talking about extremely classified things on open channels that are actually not secure. And that's what really concerns a lot of us. Then the next thing, as always with these things as they go, if you remember, Goldberg came out with the first story, and he withheld quite a bit of the information. All he said in the first story that he wrote was that they withheld portion of the conversation because it did involve tactical and operational details of the pending attack on Yemen that Hegseth himself sent about 2 to 3 hours before the actual targets were struck by our service members. So at first, when the Florida story came out, if you remember on Monday, that was withheld. And this was Pete Hegseth's response, and you'll see Jeffrey Goldberg, when he first got off his air, he had about 8 hours in the air flying from the U.S. to Hawaii. Well, still the U.S. Sorry about that. My Hawaiian brother are going to be mad at me for saying that. Flying from the mainland to Hawaii. and this was Hegseth when he first got off the plane. And here's what Goldberg had to say about it, too.
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
I don't expect you're going to respond to every aspect of that, but nobody was texting war plans. Again, you have extensive reporting. Anybody can read it. What is your reaction to that?
Look, I'm going to be responsible here and not disclose the things that I read and saw. I will describe them to you. The specific time of a future attack, specific targets, including human targets, meant to be killed in that attack, weapons systems, even weather reports, or that the government is I don't know why Hegseth was sharing it with everybody. I mean, the precise detail, and then a long section on sequencing. This is going to happen, then that is going to happen. After that happens, this happens, then that happens, and then we go and find out if it worked. I mean, he can say that it wasn't a war plan, but it was a minute-by-minute accounting of what was about to happen, organized by CENTCOM, Central Command, which is the military oversight group of the Middle East, the broader Middle East. This is their plan, and he was taking their plan and sharing it with a bunch of civilian leaders. It's interesting because as I'm reading it at 11:44 a.m. on Saturday morning, the 15th, seeing that the Houthis are not going to know about this for another couple hours.
And you know about it.
Okay, so that's the first day, and you hear Goldberg go into great pains to say that it wasn't, that it was it had to be classified information. Going to great plans while this word game of war plans versus not war plans, and he didn't release them yet. But then, of course, being Pete Hegseth and unable to admit mistakes or that any of this happened, he managed to double down the next day. Here's his second comments the next day while in Hawaii.
As I also stated yesterday, nobody's texting war plans. And that's all I have to say about that.
So those same troops that you are proud of, do you regret putting information like the ones you did in the Signal chat that could endanger those same American service members?
Nobody's texting war plans. I know exactly what I'm doing, exactly what we're directing, and I'm really proud of what we accomplished. A success.
Okay, they are. JJ, do we have the actual text? So what happened the next day was, there was a number that the intelligence chiefs went to the Senate to talk, and we could show a clip of that later. But the intelligence chiefs all went to the Senate to talk about this. They ended up talking. They had scheduled briefings ready, and they were talking about this. And over, the CIA director, the DNI said, "Look, these weren't classified. This wasn't classified. They're lying. They're lying." And eventually, the Atlantic decided, well, if you're going to say we're lying, that they weren't classified, well, then let's show it. And I think we have the actual. Here is what he actually signed. This is the Atlantic release later. Now look very careful what you're reading there. Time now, 11:40 Eastern, just confirmed we are go for mission. 12:18. So this is, mind you, 11:45. He's sending this out from the 12:15. He says the F-18s launch. He's giving the launch time out, y'all. 13:45 trigger base. Then they're hitting the first target. Just want you to put this in perspective. This is Signal. And we know now they're using their personal devices for this conversation. Why do we know they're using their personal devices? Because Steve Witkoff, the Russia envoy, was in Russia when the group chat started. And he was accused of having had this with him in Russia. But to disprove the fact, you can't believe this stuff. It's such a freaking clown show. So to disprove that he did not have this group chat with him in Russia, he admitted that it was actually on his personal devices, and he didn't look at the group chat till he got back to the United States. And he, quote, said in the story, in his own tweet, "When I got to my personal devices." So these were being sent to the personal iPhones of these folks, okay? This is what they were sending. That's a strike plan. Look, we can argue over the semantics of war plan. That's what he's doing. And so that's kind of where he's going, right? And Tammy Duckworth had some strong words about it.
Hegseth is an effing liar. This is so clearly classified info he recklessly leaked that could have gotten our pilots killed. You say he needs to resign. Here is Secretary Hegseth dealing with those questions today.
Nobody's texting war plans. There's no units, no locations, no routes, no flight paths, no sources, no methods, no classified information. You know who sees war plans? I see them every single day.
So you think he should step down?
I do, because what he texted was the drones are going to hit, then the second sortie of F-18s will be on target. That tells the enemy exactly when the drones hit in that spot, 30 minutes later, the F-18s are going to be there. That is my concern. That's why I'm so upset. As a former pilot, I have a special affinity for pilots who are out there. And these men and women, thank goodness we're not injured on this mission. And I worry about future missions. I worry that our allies.
Okay, so clearly, so he's trying to say it's not a war plan. Okay, you know, this is how they do it, y'all. They take one word and they pull that word. No, it was an operation plan. It was a strike plan, op order, Frago. I don't fucking care what you call it. Okay, they're trying to gaslight you guys. They're trying to gaslight you to think that everybody's lying when you can read with your own two eyes exactly what he posted in an open Signal chat with people who didn't need to have access to that information, to include a reporter. And, you know, the punchline, bring that tweet back up if you can't, that text if you back can't, JJ. My favorite part of this whole text chain is the top. I believe he says, oh, it's not in this one, but somewhere in this he says, we're clean for OPSEC. Okay. As they texted to, oh, that's a good one too. As they texted to a reporter, meaning they weren't clean for OPSEC. It's all lies, okay? And the troubling for a lot of us, and we'll talk to our guests about this, is he simply cannot admit mistakes were made. Okay, he has to double down. He has to attack. He has to make it worse and worse. And this is, I think, let's show one more, well, just a couple more clips. Here's a clip of Tulsi Gabbard, the DNI, answering questions about that specific stuff right there.
In fact, this committee established something called 50 USC 3235A, and this committee, on a bipartisan, apartisan basis, requires you, the DNI, to swiftly notify Congress and the Intelligence Committee if you're aware of any sort of significant unauthorized disclosure or compromise of classified information, which I would argue this has all of the markings of being that. And so if you, as the DNI, see such a thing anywhere within your organization's purview, you have the obligation to begin an investigation to report back to us on that. Would this seem to qualify to you as something worthy of that investigation?
Thank you for your question, Congresswoman. In this situation, Secretary Hegseth has the classification and declassification authority over DOD information.
This chat did not have the auspice of being a DOD chat. There's no such thing as labeling it as DOD. This was a chat amongst a great variety of people, and you, according to our law that we passed here bipartisanly, have an obligation when you think there has been a tangible, significant leak of information to instigate an investigation. Do you not think it's important to do such a thing?
Well, the National Security Council is investigating
Yes or no?
this inadvertent leak. And again, I point to Secretary Hegseth as having the classification.
I would argue that
classification
Secretary
authority.
Hegseth, if he had the dignity that he needs to have, should be walking his resignation in, because I believe that his probably is heading toward being relieved of his duty based on what I think are significant and illegal leaks, most likely.
Well, that sums it up nicely. What a great place to start and join our guest. So the bottom line is they're trying to spin it that somehow Hegseth had the declassification authority to declassify stuff in real time, okay? No. But Christy Houlihan said it well. By the way, Congressman Houlihan's also a veteran, and she said it very well. This is an intelligence spillage, okay? This is a leak, and it puts lives in danger. How much do we know? Well, let's talk to some folks who understand the lives that are in danger. We've got two great guests. Let's bring them on, Vote Vets family members. Our first is my good friend, Bryce Remkes. Bryce is out of Georgia. He is a Air Force Academy grad. Unfortunately, we still talk. Yeah, Air Force Academy grad, 9 years as an Air Force pilot, C-17 pilot. Kendall Brown, it was wonderful to have you, Kendall. You went a little viral this week. You may have seen Kendall on the internet. She is a Air Force spouse. We've got a very Air Force heavy show today. The good news, she is a Navy brat, though, so I guess we can. Guys, welcome to the show. Welcome to Online with Vote. That's so good. I really appreciate you joining us today.
Really Thanks for having me.
Kendall, let's start with you, Bryce. I mean, okay, let's just that very first lie, right? That this was not classified, that these weren't strike plans or war plans. I mean, you've flown missions into Iraq and Afghanistan. Clearly that's bogus, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know what it's like to be downrange, and there's a certain expectation about what it is you're going to do on every single day. You know, that there's a protection, there's a trust level from the people above you that you trust the fact that what you've just been assigned to do on that day, whether it's flying combat missions or whatever mission you're doing on that specific day in the AOR, that they are protecting that information, that the enemy, whoever that might be, whether it was Al-Qaeda or the Iraqis or, you know, the Taliban, for me, in my stake, that they were not privy to that information. So when I was on final approach into Kandahar, I knew that they didn't know that I was going to be there, right?
Right.
And when something like this comes up from the Secretary of Defense, me as a pilot, I would start questioning whether or not that information for that final approach segment into Kandahar or into Baghdad, if that was safe or not. Because I don't know anymore, because obviously the Secretary of Defense is compromised and that sort of stuff. And I mean, it's a very serious issue for those of us operating the airplanes to think that a very unserious person like Pete Hegseth is in charge of that information.
That's a great way to start. And Kendall, your spouse, your husband is deployed in the theater. We won't discuss where because we have OPSEC on this show. As a family member, if you'd gotten those texts from your husband prior to a mission, he probably would have been flying home, right?
He would have been flying. Right? Yes, and he would be in front of a military judge. He would have been in a courtroom. There would have been. His career would be over, and likely his personal life as well. So
right. I mean, it must have been shock. I know you went viral because you kind of turned your camera on and told it like it was. We should have shown that. JJ suck. But Kendall, you're pretty upset. I mean, how does this make you feel as a military spouse? Your spouse is deployed. Your spouse is flying combat missions right now, and to see the cavalier attitude they have towards his security, it's got to be really infuriating.
Oh, for sure. I mean, not only obviously the fact that they've done this is infuriating, the fact that they were so careless with the safety and the potential sacrifice of thousands of service members in that part of the world right now. But honestly, even more infuriating at this point is the gaslighting that has followed. The fact that they have been flippant and honestly, they've mocked people for being upset about this, which to me sends the message that they don't even think that the service members being impacted and their families have the right to be upset, which is absurd.
Yep, that's exactly it, right? And I think that's where we go to the next. And for me, as the week unfolded, it just got 10 times worse because in a lot of ways, the leak's bad, right? But the cavalier nature they've approached this way, it's like, I think, Bryce, you kind of touched on it a little bit, like, they don't even care. And so now the question you have as a pilot or a spouse is, well, if they don't care about this one, are they just going to keep doing this? And now that our enemies know they're doing it, it's got to be, is that itching at the back of your mind as a pilot, Bryce?
I just can't imagine what somebody in a carrier strike group right now is thinking. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, this happened this week. I guess it happened weeks ago, but we now know about it now. And we are still actively attacking the Houthis in Yemen. Right. Every single day, the administration is hitting these people. And it started months ago, obviously. But now, if you're about to strap on a $75 million airplane and go fly into combat, how the hell are you supposed to know that they don't know that you're coming? Yeah. I mean, it just takes it's a split-second decision between you literally dying in combat because Pete Hegseth has to send some fire emojis to his bros, and it's so ridiculous and baffling to me that somebody that literally, like I just said, is so unserious about a serious job like being the Secretary of Defense. It's just
and this is the same week. Last week was the week he had Conor McGregor come by for some showing off their tattoos instead of doing their jobs. I mean, Kendall, you're sitting back as a spouse. You've been in the military for obviously you and your family have been in the military for many years. It's got to be so discomforting to see your chain of command collapse so quickly.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, before the first time that my husband deployed years ago, I was required to attend an OPSEC training. And it wasn't even just me and the other spouses. Right. There were literally 15-year-old children in this meeting that just happened to be the child of either their mom or their dad was in the service. And because they're old enough to have social media, they also had to get this training. And it's very clear now that spouses and children are being held to higher standards than the Secretary of Defense and the Vice President of the United States. So
NBC has a story out right now where a official at HLS accidentally added actually a reporter from a right-wing organization to an email chain before an ICE raid in January, and they've been relieved of their duties and had their clearance pulled and are likely to lose their job. So they're holding civilian officials to higher standards than literally the top national security team of our country. I mean, the DNI. I mean, Bryce, I know you watch some of these things. I mean, to see the DNI and the CIA director acting like, no, it's cool. Fire flag, it's
how are we supposed to trust the people, that hold our nation's secrets so dearly when they can't even just admit a little? I mean, if you came out and said, we fucked up, you know what I mean? And
right.
We won't do it again.
Right.
Then at least we could understand that, okay, there's some consequences behind those actions, that they have had their hands slapped, whatever you want to call it. And at least they said, all right, we're good. Then me or my friends that are downrange, before we go strap on a jet, could be like, all right, mistakes were made. Let's go forward from here and all that sort of stuff. But this is different than that. This is not just, I made a mistake. This is literally minute by minute combat, proclamations and second by second things that these are decisions that are having to be made at that moment, and I just can't believe how, like Kendall described, how flippant they are about that sort of information. Like, it's not a big deal. I did it, but it's fine, whatever. So.
Right. And I think that lack of responsibility, I mean, you nailed it for me. And that's where I've been getting my rage. And I'll call it rage is the right word. I know it's the same for you guys as building is, okay, take responsibility in some way. You don't want to resign? Fine. Okay. That we'll work that out amongst us. But the fact is you refuse to acknowledge the truth that any idiot can see. They sent Kendall, if you'd received that text from your spouse or one of his buddies, your hair would have been on fire yourself, right? Because you're like, holy shit, I don't need to know this, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I honestly, it genuinely leaves me speechless that they can't even step. It's not even just a failure of OPSEC. At this point, it's a failure of leadership, because a leader acknowledges when things have been fucked up. A leader acknowledges when they have failed the people below them. And that's the problem. It's bad enough that they're not acknowledging that to the American people. They're not acknowledging it to the people whose lives they put on the line. That, like, I cannot imagine. I mean, I'm furious just being the spouse of someone that is deployed, and my husband wasn't directly the person that they were texting the movements of. I cannot imagine being those pilots and having the people at the very top refuse to even acknowledge what they have done and how that had a direct impact on you. How could you ever trust that person to lead you ever again?
That's exactly it. And something, and I love that you're a graduate of the academy as well. I'm a West Point graduate, Bryce. We were hammered into from plebe year. By the way, that's freshman year. Sorry, I'm speaking Greek. Actually, that is Greek. Anyway, I just realized I'm speaking Greek. Anyway, plebe year is your freshman year at the military academies, and you're drilled in from day one, what they like to call the warrior ethos, whatever you want to call it now, but the ethos of an officer especially is when in command, you take command. We're responsible for all the things that happen, right? It's like almost, and what's shocking to me is this is now the senior ranking official in the United States Department of Defense, and he refuses to take responsibility for his actions. And for a guy who talks about the warrior ethos every effing minute of the day, he's violating one of the most, the foundation of all that, isn't he, Bryce?
Yeah, I mean, at the Air Force Academy, right there on the wall in giant silver letters is integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do. Integrity being the number one thing, right? That's why it's the first thing on the list, is so that what you say has value and what you say means something. And if your words no longer mean anything, then the rest doesn't matter. And for somebody, and that's where we put all that merit in the military, right? The cream rises to the top because it's a meritocracy, just like he describes it to be. Well, for somebody that loves using that word like meritocracy so much and saying integrity is first, that's the first thing we value. It's clear that Pete Hegseth lacks all merit in this case. And being somebody that's downrange right now, how can I trust your words ever again unless you prove it to me again. But that doesn't seem to be where it is, because I'll just keep digging my own grave and explaining away my own mistakes rather than taking just a shred of responsibility for them.
Right.
So,
and attacking the messenger instead, when we can all see with our own eyes. And I think you and Kendall, your spouse, and that what amazes me, what I love about our military spouses is you're involved in this culture. The military culture is part of who you guys are. The military family, the military community is who we are. And that trust, that mutual trust, like that's how you and your fellow spouses sit at home, knowing that your husband or your spouse, maybe a woman, is downrange, that they're with the people they can trust in the right life. Your safety, your family safety is trusting those people that they're with. And you can't even see right now, you can't even see the Secretary of Defense to be a trustworthy person, or his spokesman who stands behind him, Sean Parnell, echoing like a little, there's no ethics that comes from the top. How far down the chain will that go for people like you, Kendall?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the culture of being able to know, and honestly, it runs both ways, right? Like when my husband deploys, I have to be able to know that I can trust the people he's with, that he's being taken care of. But also, my husband has talked about the fact that, like, because of that culture within the military, he can trust that when he deploys, I'm being taken care of, right? Like every time a couple weeks ago, both of our car batteries were dead because of a cold snap. He made a couple text messages and boom, I had two guys out jumping our cars, And so that culture of like taking care of one another is a huge part of what makes deployments survivable, both in the literal sense that they can trust that they will not be sent to their deaths, but also in the emotional sense. And in a single group chat, they have now completely destroyed that. And it's obvious that we're getting trickle truthed at this point as well. Like they are only copying to what there are receipts for. But we know that there is more. I mean, they say in that chat, I think it was Pete, one of Pete's texts that references another group chat that they clearly have going on. So who knows how many different group chats they have in Signal that they're discussing all of this sensitive information. There is not a single deployed service member right now that has a guarantee, no matter what country they're in, that there isn't potentially leakable information that would put them at risk that they're being flippant with.
And I think it's perfect. And what bothers me too is that part right there, that we know there's more. And if you look at the text, if you remember, the Atlantic put out the members of the text group, and there's two Marco Rubios, right? Marco Rubio's listed twice, which means, because he added, if you look at the whole chain, Rubio in the original message added another Rubio. What's that on, right? I mean, maybe he's got it on his government device, but did he add it to his computer at home? I mean, is this popping up while his kids are using his computer to surf the net? I mean, there's no way to know, and they refuse to investigate this. I mean, Bryce, you served in the military. If something like this had happened in one of your units, can you give us an idea of what would happen to the guy, like the captain that did this?
Well, the first thing they do is they come in the entire squadron, the entire unit, right? And they would just absolutely separate the entire place down and shut the entire place down. And so if you had, by any measure, had any sort of classified confidential information outside of a SCIF in any way, shape, or form, you're talking about UCMJ, Article 15, at a minimum, possibly up to a maximum of going to Leavenworth for God knows how long, And the Air Force has a history of doing this to people. I mean, general officers that end up years later with pieces of information on their computers, intentionally or unintentionally, have had rank pulled from them and then retired as losing stars. You know what I mean? And retiring as a lower grade because of that sort of stuff. And so, I mean, someone as lowly as me is just an Air Force captain. I mean, there's no way that I would be protected like a 1 or 2 or 3-star general in that sort of instance. So if I would have had any sort of information or inclination to have that sort of information, would be texting these sort of things to my bros back home with some fire. Hey, just bomb the Houthis. This bump, bro. I just can't imagine how hard the world would come crumbling down upon me, And then they would happily throw me under the bus and say that the reason the operation was not a success was because of me. In this case,
keep in mind,
they are hiding behind the success of this operation that they did, right?
Right.
Had something bad happened. So one of those pilots, had we lost an F-18, whether intentionally through enemy fire or unintentionally because of an engine failure and the thing crashed, God forbid we lost a pilot or somebody else in this instance, they would not be able to hide behind the success of this mission, right?
Yeah.
And they are using that as a wall to protect them and say, oh, well, it's fine because we all walked away from it. But what happens the next time when it's not fine? And like you said, how many of these chats are open for them to share this information willy-nilly about?
Well, and so two things. First of all, the fact that Marco Rubio even could add an additional version of himself to the chat, like as someone that runs Signal chats for like within my career, just interacting with online influencers, I keep those Signal chats locked down with further security. So not only are they using an app they shouldn't be using, they're not even taking advantage of the security features of that app. That's insane,
Yep. You said something key too, Bryce, is others would pay. I mean, I think of my old boss, as many might know. Maybe you don't know. I was spokesman for General Petraeus. He was my professor at West Point. It's easy to forget that he gave his notebook from Iraq to his biographer, who was a field grade officer in the United States Army at the time with a top secret clearance of her own. But just him handing his notebook, his handwritten notes from downrange, was an intel breach, okay? And he was brought up on charges for that. He was a former 4-star general, and he ended up getting like time served or whatever. But he was a 4-star general, was brought up on charges for giving a notebook with classified information in it to someone with a classification as well, with a clearance. And yet here we are, these guys are throwing out freaking secret data and not even taking responsibility for it in any way, and not paying a price for it in any way. It is incredibly frustrating, and it does drive rage. I mean, Kendall, what are you hearing amongst your fellow spouses? I mean, again, I can't imagine what the military, you're inside the military community now, and I don't want you to give away any secrets or get anybody in trouble, but what do you hear amongst the military families right now? Are they shocked by this? I mean, it must be shocking to the families.
They're angry, and a lot of them are frightened. So I have already gotten dozens and dozens of messages from different military spouses, most of them with their spouse still being active duty, at least 6 of whom also have deployed partners in the Middle East right now. And every single one, they're not only mad, at this point, they're moved to the point of mobilization. I literally had a spouse reach out to me and be like, you know what? I live in DC. You want to come out here? You come stay with me. And girl, we're going to go on the hill together. People are furious. And I mean, obviously, Republicans have taken for granted the votes of the military community for a long time. And I know that this is probably a prediction that has been made about many other times that they have disrespected the military. But it does genuinely feel a little different this time. And I think part of the reason why it feels a little different, and the one thing that I would disagree with Bryce on, when you said that, they're hiding behind the success of this mission, I don't disagree with that. They definitely are. But if something had happened, if someone had gotten killed, I don't think that would have changed whether or not they would take any responsibility. I think past behavior shows the way they'd be handling it is they'd be hiding behind blaming the service member that they got killed.
You're right.
They would be looking for reasons to blame that pilot.
You're absolutely
right. I can't argue with you. I think you're absolutely right. I think you're absolutely right. They would never take any responsibility. It's always going to be somebody else's fault. And I know you were seeing the same thing on the vet side, Bryce. I know I'm hearing it from you. It's funny how you said something so key, Kendall. You're dialed in today. You're right. Everything. Oh, sucker. What he said that McCain wasn't a hero because he was captured. Oh, that's the end. It wasn't. The suckers, losers story came out. Oh, that wasn't real. It's time and time and time again. We have it, but you're right. This does strike difference because all of us, no matter what our political affiliation, know how important it is to protect our classified information. And you're literally talking about people flying into combat and that being exposed for convenience. I mean, somebody in the chat said very, very clearly, like, they have they have options. They have SIPRnet. They have secure devices. They actually have secure handheld devices now. They're just not as convenient, and they don't have disappearing messages, right? I mean, they could have done this the right way, Bryce, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's like you just went through a litany of mechanisms in which they could have gone through all these sort of things and discussed this thing. I mean, for something like a small group like this, for national security reasons, they would never have been, they'd be in a skiff, right? They'd be in a room going through this sort of thing. It'd be hilarious if in hindsight we could go back and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton were texting each other during the Osama bin Laden raid and like, fist bump, yo, we got him. Can you imagine the outrage
good start
on the other side on something like that? It's just baffling. I mean, it's just.
And I want to circle back to that too, Bryce. I mean, while you were not an attack pilot, you served in combat. We lost peers. I was I was a scout pilot. We killed people. It's the nature of the business. That was our job, especially in Desert Storm. We killed a lot of people. Are you struck by the frivolousness of it? Like these people think it's a game, right? That we are killing people. The Yemenis reported like 52 people were killed that very first set of strikes. Yeah. And the answer from our national security leaders, people who have ordered our men and women to go and kill other people, even if you're not a Christian, you have to say, okay, we're taking people's lives, right? And not all of them were bad guys. Some of them were just kids. They were innocent. Does the frivolousness of it all strike you as odd, Bryce?
Well, I don't think there's any surprise when you hire a freaking Fox News weekend anchor. That's a completely jokeable. It's like having the jester dance for you. These people have kissed the ring and they've bounced up and down and shown Trump that they'll be loyal at all costs, and so they're literally willing to sell their own souls. So why wouldn't they sell an Air Force pilot's, a Navy pilot's, or a Yemeni kid's soul? They don't care. It's completely careless, and it's so sad to think that these are the people that are making decisions like that, like you said.
Yeah. I mean, it's all theatrics, not actually. It's a perfect time. You guys got to see this video, and I don't think we need to watch the whole thing, but one of the things that strikes me about Hegseth is somebody noted that every single post, every single photo put out by the DOD now is a picture of Hegseth. Like, no matter where he goes, it's about him doing push-ups or lifting weights. It's not about the people he's visiting. And they put this out just today. I noticed this as we were going on the air today. JJ, can you run this ridiculous? This is just posted by the Secretary of Defense while he's visiting the Philippines just about an hour ago, I think. You have that video? Cool. You too, Bryce, right? He's like, it's right there. I mean, I can see the comments. It's like, that was like a cinematic, like 2-camera shoot. And the tweet they put it on was like, honoring the 17,000 U.S. service members lost in the Philippines. But you notice what wasn't highlighted or seen in that entire fucking video? Anything to do with the 17,000 fucking service members, right? I mean, the close-up of Pete looking serious, it's like the fucking clownery. I can't imagine Kendall having to be in there right now. I mean, do you guys see that? I mean, do the family see that we've become props for the fucking Hegseth show?
For sure. Absolutely. I have spoken to multiple other military spouses that is the most horrifying part. Honestly, I've had a reoccurring nightmare now for several months that at least once a month, I've had a nightmare that something's happened to my husband. I have to go receive his body in Delaware, and it's Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth that are there. And I know I'm not the only spouse having those kind of nightmares, because at this point it's very clear every service member currently serving, previously serving, dead or alive, is just a prop to them. That's all. Obviously that's been clear for a very long time, especially given that the commander in chief has so delightfully said that he doesn't want any disabled service members brought around him because they aren't visually appealing enough for his taste. But it makes me so mad that I literally become at a loss for words, that they are reducing these human beings and honestly, like, not even just the service members, also the people, like you said, it was not just guilty people that are killed, like innocent people get killed. Those lives matter. And those lives are nothing but props to them as well. There is not a single member of the armed forces, current or former, that Pete Hegseth would not sign off happily on the death of if it meant he got another cool 30-second spot to run on Fox News.
I think that's the thing. Many of the people I know, and I've served in a couple wars. I did Desert Storm, which was violent and just a deadly war, fast. I served 3 Iraq tours, including the initial invasion of Iraq. So I've seen combat, and so many of my peers who served. I was an aviator, but served on the ground. The thing that bothers them the most isn't it's those we lost, my brothers and sisters. I lost 2 soldiers that affected me deeply, but also taking other humans' lives. That we bear that awesome responsibility of having the choice to take humans' lives. I don't think people who've never served understand when you do go to combat that first time. We were aware of that. I remember talking about it in the FOB before going in to Iraq the first time in Desert Storm, that when our nation hadn't really been to war for a couple of decades, except for and I remember my Apache pilots and I talking about the idea that we were going to be unleashed to kill, and that awesome responsibility that weighs on you. Bryce, none of these people understand the awesome responsibility of sending our men and women into war and taking the lives of others. It's so frivolous to them.
Yeah, it's all cosplay, right? These are guys that are they're dressing up. Whether it's JD Vance putting on a freaking patch and going to shoot a gun like he's some sort of tough guy.
And I know freedom seeds or some shit. It's like It's all just a joke to them.
I get it. I get that he served. I get that he was a Marine, and I appreciate the fact that he served his country. And same with Hegseth. I understand, he did serve his country, but where did they lose, like you described, the gravity of that decision, of those decisions that you make? Whether it's with the pull of a finger or with the use of your brain and picking a target, where did they lose their way in that sort of decision making, where they think that this is just all like, oh, let's just get dressed up and look like we're bros and everybody's going to like us. I still have several of my brothers and sisters that are still in the military. And I don't mean actual siblings. I mean people that I consider my brothers and sisters. And, it is absolutely disgusting to me to think that they're putting on a uniform to just look cool, rather than what that means when you put that uniform on and what you might have to do to the person next to you and for yourself in order to keep this country safe. And these guys are just playing around with it like it's a video game. They don't care.
Yeah. And Kendall, you are in, your family is in, your neighbors where you live are in, with that awesome responsibility. The war hasn't stopped. It's funny how many Americans think we're not at war right now, right? We all know better. We are sending our men and women into kinetic operations. What would you like to see right now? If you had a vote, if you had a voice in this, Kendall, what do you want to see from these people at this point?
Frankly, I want every one of them gone. Every single person on that group chat. I think their career should be over, because I think that's the only way that anyone in DC right now in a position of power can show that they in any way understand the awesome nature of the sacrifice that they are asking service members to make. And I think that this flippant handling of that sacrifice, this flippant treatment of service members as nothing but props, has infected every single aspect of how they are interacting with the military community. I mean, just the fact that like you said, taking lives takes a mental toll on a person. And so now those pilots that they put at risk, they're also going to continue to put them at risk, because when they get back to the United States, if they're struggling with that mental health struggle, they've now started to gut their ability to get healthcare for that.
Yep.
The crisis hotline is now a lot harder to get a hold of. So at every single stage, they've basically told these service members, fuck you, we don't care about you. You are disposable to us. That is all you are. You are every bit as disposable as that stupid Marines hat that JD Vance put on when he was in the mess hall at whatever base he was at visiting.
Quantico.
They're just disposable props, not human beings.
And one of the folks in the question, just great question in the chat, just asked it, like, how does this affect recruitment? I can talk recruitment, but Kendall, I can't imagine how this affects, because one of the things we say in the military quite a bit is you recruit the individual, you retain the family, right? And so it was something we said a lot. For those who understand the military aspect, what they mean is when a young person joins the military, I was 17 when I went to West Point. I got married at 25, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. For the decision to stay in that military, to remain in uniform, is a family decision at some point. You are a part of that decision matrix. I can't imagine this is going to make it much harder to retain people. We're going to start really hemorrhaging people soon, aren't we?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh my God. That question will make me emotional, just because, to be honest, and Andrew, if you see this, I'm so sorry that I'm talking about this. My husband and I have had several emotional conversations recently where, to be honest with you, if I could, snap my fingers and get exactly what I want, my husband would not sign another contract when he gets home. He's up to sign it. And I know he's going to sign it. He's career military, so he's in it for the long haul. But if I had my way, he would not. And I know there's a lot of spouses out there that feel that way. And honestly, I think there's a lot more service members that would be more easily swayed to be like, you know what, you're right. I'm done. I'm out. And I mean, they're decimate. And the irony of the fact that one of the first actions that Trump took upon starting his second term was getting rid of was it Admiral Fagan, I think, and blaming her impact on recruitment. I'm like, motherfuckers, what impact do you think you're going to have on recruitment? All of this. What do you think that's going to do to recruitment?
Yep.
Yeah, I just want to echo what she said real quick. I mean, my father went to the Air Force Academy. I went to the Air Force Academy. My father-in-law went to the Air Force Academy. My wife's brother is still a reservist. My sister served over 20 years in the military as well. I've got a almost 16-year-old daughter who has talked about being a pilot someday. And I told her that it's probably best that you don't go to the Air Force Academy. She'd be the third generation to go there. And I told her that right now, because of the way that things are, it's probably best you don't go there. So this is a family business to us. It's all my family's ever known. My dad immigrated to this country and he wanted to be in the United States military. And I've passed it down generation to generation. And now we're ending that because of people that are so careless and lack complete moral compass on what's important. So
that's probably a great place for us to start wrapping up too. I know you mean about the family business. Wellmans have served since before there was a nation. Believe it or not, 1640 we came over. Our first Wellman to serve in the military was impressed by the British troops as they marched through the village on the way to Canada. And we've served. My father was a World War II Marine. I went to West Point. My son was in the 82nd Airborne. I would have a very hard time seeing the next generation of Wellmans to serve. And it is a family. And for those who don't understand, especially our civilians who are watching the show, This is a very dangerous place because in the all volunteer force, upwards of 30 to 50% of those who serve come from military families. So when the military families like Bryce's and Kendall's and mine say, you know what, you probably shouldn't serve because they don't care about you and your life is not matter to them, that they will treat you and your safety so recklessly as to send it in a group chat and then be dicks about it when they get caught, that is going to really affect. And I'll let you guys go, but my last little iteration is, and that isn't just for today, y'all. This is national security for 20 years. Because if Kendall's husband gets out, that means there won't be a potential general in 20 years, right? Because you don't make generals overnight. This is going to be a national security impact that doesn't just go for the Trump administration, this clusterfuck. It's going to go for decades to come as the good people vote with their feet now. So with that, any last thoughts, Kendall and Bryce? We're going to show your videos after I let you guys go. Kendall, ladies first.
I will just say that members of Congress right now that are either defending this or dodging questions about it, I think you have a decision to make. Either you hold the people in that group chat accountable now, or voters will hold you accountable the next time you're up for re-election. But either way, somebody's losing their job. So right now is the moment you get to pick.
Love it. Bryce?
Can't say any better than that.
Yeah. All right. Then I'll let you both go. I can't thank you guys enough for joining us here today. I know our audience loved it and I appreciate it. We're going to show your videos you did for us, or the one you did, Kendall, on your own after you got guys. But thank you for joining us. Stay safe out there, Kendall. Good best of luck to your husband. Stay safe out there. Bryce, keep doing what you do. I know you're still serving in your own way too, our nation. I appreciate that. See you guys soon. Hey, JJ, let's show Kendall going viral.
But I do want to make it very clear, and I hope that you will take down this message and relay it to the senator to help encourage him to actually be a man and make sure that I get a call set up when I reach out to the scheduler. I want you to let him know that if he doesn't reach out to me, I'm recording every single time that I have called his office and left a voicemail or spoke to an intern like you. I am recording all of those. And if I don't hear back from him, I will be sending them to every possible newsroom, both in Oklahoma and nationally, to let them know that the senator is too much of a coward to call back the wife of one of the service members in his constituency that was put at risk. And so help me God, if I have to quit my fucking job to make sure that I can drive to every fucking campaign and public event that the senator has for the rest of his career, I will make it my life's work to destroy his career by making sure that every fucking Oklahoman knows how few fucks he gave about my husband's life and the lives of other active duty service members.
Yes, ma'am. I understand.
All right, what is...
That's Kendall Brown, who was just on the show, obviously, reaching out to her Senator Mark Wayne Mullen. Mark Wayne Mullen has continued to make mockery of this whole situation, literally mocking it, literally saying it's not important, that it doesn't matter. Well, Kendall Brown, who was just on our show, happens to be one of his constituents, and she ain't having that bullshit. And then when our friend Bryce was just on, he did a video for us right here at VoteFets as well.
Hey everyone, my name is Bryce. I'm a former combat pilot from the United States Air Force with dozens of combat missions over Iraq and Afghanistan. It's absolutely baffling to me that our nation's military and national security leaders would jeopardize the safety of America's finest aviators by texting back and forth the flight plans, including times over target for our military operations in Yemen. It's clear that Pete Hegseth is a very unserious person with a very serious job. He's completely incompetent and incapable of leading our nation's military and must resign in this situation. For somebody that's so destined to make our military and our country a meritocracy and values merit so much, it's clear that Pete Hegseth has absolutely none.
It sums it up perfectly. I was so glad to have Bryce and Kendall on the show. If you're just joining us late, by the way, make sure you watch the replay. We'll be posting this immediately afterwards. You can watch it from the beginning. But it's so valuable to have the perspective of a veteran like who's flown in combat missions like Bryce, and of course a spouse who's got a husband deployed right now and is dealing with the stress of knowing that his life and the safety of he and his squadron mates means so little to the Secretary of Defense and his friends, as it's a joke that they'll send emojis when they go on missions. It's ridiculous at this point, you know. So we're going to leave you. I'm going to wrap things up. It's been this is great. So many of you showed up. We appreciate you so much. I really enjoy your company. I hope you learned something today. You know, in the end, there's also the fact we have to recognize that what fucking clowns they are. That in the end, as we take this all very seriously, okay, you have to understand that these people have no idea what they're doing, that these people do not take it seriously, and they're hypocrites. In the end, we're going to show that hypocrisy as we go on. Before I let that run, that'll be our outro, by the way. Remember, this is Vote Vets. You can learn more about what we do at votevets.org. That's at votevets.org. We're everywhere on social media as Vote Vets, one word. Very easy to find us. Things are happening across the country. If you want to join us, if you go to our website, there's a spot you can say take action. There's a spot you can donate. We need your support to do this work. I hope you appreciate that. But you guys, just being here matters. If you'll tell your friends about our show, you'll recommend our show to other people you will hear. We'll be back probably on Monday. We got something interesting to talk about. I can't wait to talk about. We had another great candidate that's running for office. He was a veteran like us. We'll have that probably Monday. We'll have more shows like this and videos on Friday. As always, join us here. Follow us at Vote Vets channel on YouTube. Just can't wait to have you. With that, I want you to this is Pete Hegseth, folks. This is the person who refuses to take responsibility. This is a person who refuses to accept that he made a mistake. This is a person who talks shit all the time about the warrior ethos, how important it is. And now you can see this is how full of shit he is. This is the hypocrisy that is Pete Hegseth. And we'll see you soon.
Any security professional, military, government, or otherwise, would be fired on the spot for this type of conduct and criminally prosecuted for being so reckless with this kind of information.
The assumption is in the intelligence community, if you are using unclassified means, there is the potential for and likelihood that foreign governments are targeting those accounts and gathering intelligence from them.
How damaging is it to your ability to recruit or build allies with others when they are worried that our leaders may be exposing them because of their gross negligence or their recklessness in handling information?
She was less than truthful about it, repeatedly. And it goes to the issue of both competence and credibility. It is irresponsible for an elected official in her capacity to be discussing highly sensitive things on a format that she had to have known was not fully secured.
So it's always a good thing that we see that there is investigation and prosecution of folks if they're not handling that classified information.
So let's see where the sitting national security advisor, right now Jake Sullivan, was sending and laundering classified documents into an unclassified server.
Trump's deputy chief of staff for policy reacted to the Clinton emails, writing, "One point that doesn't get made enough about Hillary's unsecured server illegally used to conduct state business, obviously created to hide the Clintons' corrupt pay-for-play. Foreign adversaries could easily hack classified ops and intel in real time from other side of the globe."
This is a real deal, full-blown national security scandal.